Watch the amazing moment when a humble janitor saves the day, leaving the CEO and team in shock. The gleaming tower of Damonte Tech loomed over Chicago's skyline, a hub of innovation and ambition. Inside its polished halls, Jake, the janitor, moved with quiet determination. Years of meticulous cleaning had equipped him with an intimate knowledge of the building's secrets. Every corner, every crack in the floor, was etched into his memory. Yet, as he mopped the conference room, he felt an unsettling undercurrent in the air, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Tonight was meant to be prestigious. A product launch that could redefine the market. But tension surged, palpable like an electric current. Jake observed the buzz around him. Sleek suits hurried past with their heads down, oblivious to the man tirelessly maintaining the space they occupied. His late father's teachings echoed in his mind: hard work is the foundation of dignity. Yet day after day, Jake's presence was reduced to the ghostly flicker of a cleaning cart against the backdrop of corporate neurosis, but this evening felt different. Tension thickened as flurries of discussion ignited. A security breach had sent ripples of disbelief through the company. Panic began to surface, and Jake could sense the urgency weighing on the tech-savvy team. They were staggering into chaos, lost in their world of code and ambition. Jake remained on the fringes, but his heart raced with the thought of what was unfolding. The unusual noise, people rustling papers, tapping screens, was a strike against the veneer of control. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake felt the familiar creep of self-doubt as his thoughts swirled. Could he step into the spotlight? He had spent years blending into the background, but all those quiet moments of observation provided him insights that could quell the rising storm. If he didn't act, the company he cherished would spiral into disarray, wrecked by the arrogance of a CEO too enamored by his image to recognize the true danger. Jake's pulse quickened. He could either stay invisible, the quiet janitor swept in and out of existence, or he could weave himself into the very fabric of resolution. Suddenly, the tightening in his chest constricted. An ethical dilemma sprouted. Was he willing to confront authority, risking embarrassment for his rightful place among the team? As applause erupted for the CEO's hollow brilliance, Jake felt suffocated by the weight of injustice shrouding him. The anxious mutterings of his colleagues shifted toward recognition, torn between their newfound respect for Jake's quiet determination versus the blaring ego of their leader. Sensing the moment slip as the room filled with accolades too large for a mere executive, Jake stood on the precipice of decision. Would his voice carry weight in a boardroom where silence reigned as a rule? The air pulsed with potential, and he hesitated, caught between the fear of stepping forward and the burning desire to reclaim his narrative. The room darkened with collective anticipation, and he would soon discover if he could rise like a phoenix from the ashes of neglect. Jake inhaled deeply, steeling himself. The whispers of doubt, like nagging shadows, encroached upon his resolve. He had cleaned these halls for years, witnessing moments of brilliance, but this felt different. A reprimand hung, palpable and close, whispering he'd remain a mere custodian unless he chose to defy the quiet. As he looked at the assembled faces, he recognized frantic determination beneath their polished exteriors. They were all searching for answers that he briefly considered retreating to the familiarity of his cleaning supplies, the radio murmuring softly in the background, a present but faint distraction. The mop in his hand felt heavier as if the weight of the moment pressed upon it. But as the echoes of the CEO's empty rhetoric resonated, something inside him flickered, a fierce yearning to unearth the truths locked within him. Jake! The sharp voice of Rebecca, one of the lead developers, sliced through the clamor. She looked panicked, her fingers flying over her keyboard. Are you seeing this? We have a breach that could ruin everything. Instead of merely responding with a nod, Jake stepped closer, a bold move for a man trained to fade into the backdrop. He could see data cascading across monitors, numbers spiraling upward. He had no technical expertise, but he had seen patterns, glimpsed behavior, and understood chaos. The towers of data, much like the debris he dutifully swept away, revealed a narrative screaming to be told. "I may have something," he heard himself say, a mixture of surprise and determination washing over him. The astonished faces turned towards him, confusion mingling with disbelief. It wasn't just their perception that needed to transform, it was his. "What do you mean?" Rebecca pressed, her brow furrowing. "Their SA service tunnel," Jake continued, the words flowing freer now. He could hardly believe his own voice. "I've seen odd activity down there at odd hours. If someone gained access, it could explain the breach. I could help find out how deep this goes." Muted gasps resonated among the surrounding crowd. No longer hidden behind the glimmer of corporate polish, Jake finally grasped the burgeoning recognition. He wasn't just a janitor, he was part of something larger. Each cleaved tile and polished desktop was, in its own way, a realm he understood instinctively, a world he could navigate. As the team mobilized, questions filled the air. Where was the entry point? How long would it take to assess? Who would oversee operations? Jake felt the mounting intensity, a sharp contrast to the stillness he had always embraced. This was chaos, energy unleashed, and he found himself thriving within it, scaling his own fears. Jake no longer stood on the periphery, he engaged with ideas and voices, feeling the pulse of urgency that surged from the group. He might have been the last name on the roster, but right then, an undeniable spark ignited his identity. Those years of observation had transformed into a cache of insight, a rich resource at their disposal. "Let us go," Rebecca urged, action galvanizing the room. With newfound courage swelling in his chest, Jake followed the team, each step more purposeful than the last. No, he wouldn't just be the custodian in this narrative, he was walking toward becoming an unlikely hero, ready to dismantle ignorance and reclaim agency. But as they approached the dimly lit corridor to the service tunnel, a chill clawed at Jake's skin, an unsettling realization dawning upon him. Perhaps the risk was greater than he anticipated. In the labyrinth of shadows loomed the truth, and as they pushed forward, he sensed the importance of confronting not just external threats but the fears festering inside him as well. Would he courageously face whatever lay ahead, or would uncertainty bind him once more? The door creaked ajar, every heartbeat amplifying the stakes. Jake would have to decide if he was ready to confront more than just the darkness surrounding him. It was time for a reckoning, and the path forward shimmered with both peril and promise. As Jake crossed the threshold of the dimly lit corridor, cold air swept over him, raising goosebumps along his arms. The harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the stale air, each one a fragment of his own uncertainty. The corridor ahead appeared interminable, echoing with uncharted secrets and potential dangers. He felt the weight of the team behind him. This time, he wasn't just trailing, he was leading. "Did you hear any noises before?" one of the developers asked, his voice quivering slightly as they tiptoed forward. Jake paused, assembling his thoughts, his growing confidence challenged by the creeping doubt that had plagued him for so long. "I noticed," he started, fighting against the urge to shrink into his old self. "A pattern at night. It always seemed off, like footsteps that didn't belong." Rebecca glanced at him, her eyes wide, simultaneously intrigued and anxious. "If you're right, we need to act fast. Time is of the essence," she breathed, urgency coloring her tone. As she initiated a small group to discuss strategies, Jake stepped aside, allowing fragments of their banter to tap into the reservoir of insight he had long overlooked. Understanding flowed back to him in waves, moments spent observing these people, eavesdropping on their conversations, deciphering their technologies from afar. Each second he spent as a custodian had been a masterclass in various disciplines, security protocols from technology talks, the machinations of finance in heated debates, the logistics of design in quick brainstorming sessions. This was his moment to leverage all those silent lessons. What he lacked in formal knowledge was rapidly being eclipsed by practical wisdom. Those rogue observations were about to crystallize into sharper insights. Jake's heart raced with newfound determination. He rushed back to the group, eager to contribute, to transform desolate observations into actionable plans. "Can I propose something?" he said, his voice steadier now, gaining traction. The flickering lights momentarily paused as all eyes turned toward him, the room silent except for the hum of computers in the background. "We can use that service tunnel map I sketched on my break to scope out potential routes for anyone trying to access the system. It might give us an edge if we can see where the traffic has been." "Sketch? You have a map?" Rebecca asked, genuine disbelief evident in her tone. "Yeah, let me show you." Jake quickly outlined the map from memory, detailing the twists and turns that fragmented the old building layout. As he sketched, energy began to ripple across the room, once more a spark ignited. The others rallied around him, brainstorming possible entry points and strategies. The conversation crackled with fervor, every individual offering solutions that surged through his confidence. For the first time, Jake's voice felt authentically authoritative rather than a ghostly echo. Adrenaline coursed through his veins, transforming uncertainty into fuel for his conviction. He was no longer on the periphery, he was intricately woven into the fabric of the team's mission, but just as Jake began to see a path forward, a sudden, unsettling noise echoed through the tunnel, a clattering that reverberated ominously, sliding to a chilling halt. The team's chatter ceased, replaced by an oppressive tension that hung thick in the air. Jake inhaled sharply, the hairs on the back of his neck standing at attention. What if they weren't the only ones in the tunnel? What if lurking in those shadows were threats they could not yet comprehend? The space felt constrictive, a raw panic bubbling as he peered into the darkness, heart pounding. "We need to be ready," he forced out, his bravado wavering under the weight of reality. As the noise settled into an uneasy silence, Jake's resolve sharpened. This was a moment poised for revelation, one that demanded the utmost courage. Fighting against the burgeoning fear that flooded his mind, he questioned not just their mission but his very role in it. If facing the unknown was critical to their survival, he would need to delve into the depths of both the corridor and himself. The stakes had never been higher, and yet, like a beacon within him, an inner truth began to surface: he had the capacity to navigate this chaos, however terrifying it might be. But there remained a question that loomed as large as the shadows surrounding them: would he ultimately steer them toward salvation, or would he falter when faced with the real dangers ahead? The flickering light overhead buzzed ominously as they prepared for what lay beyond, and Jake braced himself for the inevitable confrontation with the darkness not just outside but within. The silence hung thick, the air charged with unspoken tension. The sudden clatter had jolted him, reawakening the old fears resting just beneath the surface of his newfound confidence. He glanced at his team, faces a mix of uncertainty and anticipation, their trust in him palpable. In the shadows, something stirred, a reminder that he was not just leading a mission, he was also a man who had spent years in the background, invisible in the hustle of the corporate world. "You know the layout better than any of us, Jake," Rebecca said softly, breaking the silence. "What's your gut telling you?" His mind raced as he processed their expectation. This wasn't just about confronting external threats, it was an opportunity to reclaim his voice, his place. "If we can stay close to the walls, use the shadows to hide our movements," he suggested, recalling his years of cleaning well-lit offices after hours, his eyes learning to navigate by the faintest sources of illumination. "We may be able to flank whoever it is before they realize we're here." As he outlined the next steps, the fear that had once paralyzed him transformed into a sharp focus. Each word was a foundation they could build on, a shoring up of the self-doubt that had lingered. His team adjusted their strategies accordingly, eyes brightening as if a veil had lifted. They moved forward, choosing the path Jake had sketched from memory. Against the backdrop of potential danger, he felt something stir deeper than adrenaline. It was as if each shadow provided a solid grounding in who he had always aspired to be. With every step, he summoned pieces of himself that had long remained dormant. Suddenly, another noise echoed, this time more distinct, footfalls much heavier than theirs. The sound reverberated like a threat, and a chill crawled up Jake's spine, whispering the old fears of inadequacy. But now, he could not afford to let them surface. He had to make a snap decision: stay hidden or confront whatever lay ahead. "Stay quiet," he whispered, his resolve coiling tightly within him. They crouched lower, peering ahead into the murky dimness, straining to decipher the source of the ominous sounds. A moment stretched like an expanse of time, and from the shadows, a silhouette emerged. "Do not move," barked a voice, gruff and commanding. The heartbeats in the group synchronized into a rapid rhythm. Jake's instincts flared, and for a fraction of a moment, he felt the intoxicating weight of leadership wash over him again. "We're not here to cause trouble," Jake flipped the script in his mind, taking a bold step forward, instinct overriding fear. "We're just trying to understand what is happening. You don't want this to escalate." The figure paused, tension rippling through the corridor. Jake's voice steadied, fortified by a layer of newfound authority. It was as if the years of observing had gifted him a mastery of language, a bridge to reach across the divide of uncertainty. "Who are you to think we wouldn't make trouble?" the stranger growled, stepping further into the light. Jake assessed the intruder, a large man with a hardened face, and prepared for the reality of confrontation. He could either stand down and fade a role he had known too well or engage his fears head-on, a choice that could redefine everything. "I'm just a custodian," he replied, a slow dawning of confidence threading through his tone, "but I think it's time for us to learn things together, instead of against each other." As Jake spoke, something shifted in the air, an opening, a vulnerability that had been hidden amidst the threats and pressing shadows. What had begun as an encounter fraught with danger now shimmered with the promise of understanding. The man hesitated, uncertainty breaking through his hardened exterior. In that moment, Jake recognized an undeniable tension not just within the corridor but within himself, a confrontation unlike any he had faced before, one that could define his journey as both a professional and a person. The stakes escalated with each second, each heartbeat pounding with potential. In his chest, hope battled against the remnants of fear, and Jake understood this was the moment he had to cement his growth. Now, with the darkness looming on one side and potential redemption on the other, he had to ask himself, was he ready to embrace not just the challenge, but a new identity, a leader emerging from within the depths? The air crackled as he readied himself for what came next, the looming question echoing deep within: would he confront fear with a strength born of experience and understanding, or would he retreat once again into the shadows? Jake felt the weight of every word he spoke echo in the silence that had enveloped them. It wasn't just a simple proclamation, it was a revelation to himself as much as it was an address to the armed man standing before them. The tension hung like a tangible thread linking the two of them, a battleground of ideologies ready to clash. "I'm just a custodian," he repeated, prodding the stranger's curiosity. "But maybe we're both custodians of something greater here." The large man faltered, brow furrowing as he studied Jake's face, searching for a crack, a sign of weakness, yet all he found was a resolute gaze burning with unexpected determination. In the past, Jake would have flinched under such scrutiny, but tonight felt different. The pressure had the power to ignite, to forge him into something new. "What do you know about custodianship?" The man finally spat, the challenge clear in his voice. Jake took a breath, grounding himself in the moment. "I know it means taking care of what's around us, protecting it, ensuring it continues to serve its purpose. We're custodians of our environment, our colleagues, our dreams. I believe we can find mutual ground here." As he spoke, Jake sensed the unease of his team behind him. He could hear whispering breaths, feel the underlying support wrapping around him like a warm blanket, igniting an unfamiliar confidence. Each heartbeat emphasized the duality of his fears and aspirations. Those familiar voices from the shadows of his past: "Stay back. You don't belong. Know your place," began to drown beneath the emerging mantra of resilience. The tension between him and the intruder thickened, but Jake remained steadfast. He assessed the man's stance, noticed the tightening of fists momentarily betraying the bravado. There was fear beneath that hardened exterior, and he had to expose it. "I want to understand why you're here." "We don't have to be enemies," Jake urged. He stepped farther into the light, refusing to back down. For the first time, Jake saw the flicker of uncertainty dance across the intruder's features. He pressed on, mustering the remnants of self-doubt and turning them into an offering of trust. I come from a place where shadows cast the longest. I've been sidelined and ignored, but we can change that narrative. He gestured to his team, eyes glinting with fresh determination. All I'm asking for is a chance to talk. We could help each other. The figure hesitated again, glancing at the group crouching in the dark. They had been quiet but resolute, and at that moment, Jake sensed the shift in the atmosphere, the would-be confrontation wavering like a candle in the wind. Why should I trust you? The man demanded. Though the edge had dulled, Jake formulated his response carefully, weighing each word to ensure he left nothing to chance. Because if we continue down this path of conflict, we all lose. I'm willing to put my past behind me and step into the light if you are. Trust is the first step toward change. In that pivotal instant, time stretched thin. He felt the burning demands of past failures, social hierarchies, and feared debt weighing on him like an anvil, but in juxtaposition was the flicker of potential leaping into an empowering flame. Transformation wasn't singular, it required shared commitment to discover a new path. The man shifted, his body language eviscerating the once imposing walls. And if I refuse? Then we'll be back to shadows, to fear and hostility. But I refuse to hide, Jake replied, resolve forging through his words. The challenge lay not solely with the intruder but in Jake fully embracing this newfound persona as a leader. In the aftermath of silence, a flicker of understanding passed between them, the seed of possibility taking root. Jake felt his journey accelerating into uncharted territory, both exhilarating and daunting. The chase for meaning and connection loomed larger than before. Jake's pulse quickened as he thought of what lay ahead, a conversation filled with potential, a negotiation dancing on the edge of conflict and resolution. He had faced 1,000 moments of silence before, but this was different. This was the forging of a partnership from the heat of adversity. As they stood there suspended in vulnerability, Jake realized the true work was just beginning. Would he forge ahead, arms entwined with understanding? Or would he simply slip back into the dark corners he had finally begun to illuminate? The moment hung delicately, a powerful decision unfurling just out of reach. What would emerge from the shadows and challenge the very essence of what he thought he knew about leadership? Jake's heart raced as the intruder's gaze flickered. The challenge wasn't just to convince the man standing before him but to cement his own transformation into the leader he never thought he could be. Every second felt like an eternity, pregnant with the potential to either deepen the rift or build an unprecedented bridge. You mentioned trust. How can I trust someone who has always obeyed? The man's voice shifted from aggression to curiosity, an unsettling mix of vulnerability woven into his defiance. Jake saw this as his opening. Obedience can be a prison or an act of service. It's the intent that matters. I'm here not to follow, but to lead if you give me a chance. Leadership isn't about authority, it's about fostering collaboration. Those words resonated deep within Jake. He had always been just the custodial staff, a shadow brushed aside, but now he was claiming space. The atmosphere around them thickened, hanging like heavy fog, ideal for shaping perceptions, but instincts nagged. He could easily let the gravity of their exchange drag him back to silence and submission. Instead, he sharpened his focus on the man. Why are you really here? Jake's voice held steadiness that surprised even him. Conniving for power? Or do you seek something deeper? The figure before him stewed, remnants of his previous belief system struggling to hold ground. Jake could see the gears turning, a flicker of self-reflection igniting within the man. Here was someone who reflected his own past fights, the desperate need for acknowledgement, the relentless shadow of resentment. Do you believe we can do something together? Transcend where we were handed? Jake pressed further. I'm not defined by the label of janitor. These walls, this space, they are our common ground. A canvas waiting for new strokes. The man took a deep breath, uncertainty etched in his features. You don't understand the stakes this isn't about you or me. It's survival. His voice softened, blending the hard edge with a shy recognition of vulnerability. Jake felt the shift, the subtle unraveling of hostility. He took a step closer, the distance shrinking between them. Survival is built on relationships, connections forged in trust, not animosity. If we look inward, we might find purpose. Perhaps we can believe in something bigger and actualize our potential. Within the silence, Jake absorbed his team's tension behind him, fear mingling with a scintilla of hope. This man was challenging Jake to confront his visions, to break free from the bindings of his past, yet simultaneously, he grappled with the fears that accompanied stepping into the light. So what now? The intruder asked, almost weary. Jake could see he was on the precipice of a decision, his internal tug-of-war reflecting Jake's own struggles. We begin, Jake replied, allowing determination to pour into his words, lest he falter. Step by step, together. We forge a coalition of custodians who believe in shared stewardship instead of enmity. For a moment, the chaos of uncertainty wrapped around them like a cocoon. In those breaths, heavy with authenticity, Jake sensed potential. Would this man accept the olive branch? Was he ready to embrace a future intertwining both their lives? As the silence deepened once more, Jake's focus sharpened. He realized he had to embody the very ideals he spoke of, risking everything for resolution. The question loomed, was he prepared for the magnitude of this undertaking? Suddenly, a movement caught his attention. A shadow flickered from the corner of his eye, the door creaking ajar as a figure slipped through unnoticed. In their rapid retreat, Jake felt his heart seize a reminder that not all shadows could be turned to light. Could the fragile bridge he sought to build survive the impending chaos? The tension in the room pressed against Jake like a weight, his breath shallow as the intruder's indecision hung between them. He could feel the eyes of his team on him, straining for resolution. An unexpected tiara of light flickered in that dim space. A possibility of transformation was glowing on the horizon, but all depended on the man who now stood before him. Time is slipping, but trust takes time, Jake stated, his voice steady despite the turmoil rising within. We can't afford to remain adversaries. It will be our downfall. The intruder's brow furrowed, and for a heartbeat, Jake recognized that familiar facade of defiance as a mask cloaking deeper fears. Everything he had ever been, an overlooked janitor, a mere cog in the larger machine, embraced him at once, colliding with the man he was becoming. Here, under the oppressive weight of silence, crushed ambitions found a moment to breathe. I don't know if I can change who I am, the intruder finally admitted, each word a hesitant step forward. My entire life has been about survival in this place. Jake saw the struggle mirrored within himself. We can reshape our identities together. He paused, letting vulnerability seep through. I've lived as someone else's ghost, obedient and silent. But now, I want to be more. Leadership is about stepping out from the shadows. Jake's words solicited a pause from the man, who visibly shifted his tension, thawing before Jake's encouragement. Was this the breakthrough they needed? The energy in the air crackled with potential, though shadows lingered, waiting to undermine this fragile truce. What do you expect of me? The intruder finally asked, resigned yet curious. Jake realized how significant this question was. It wasn't about lifting him up, but about their shared journey into the unknown. He took a moment to consider. We each carry a burden. The first step is to share it. Jake took a deep breath, pouring conviction into those words. Admitting our fears and doubts transforms them. We'll rebuild strength from there. He reached out, extending a hand, inviting a solidarity that challenged both their natures, but the man hesitated. The room felt electric, laden with the weight of choice. This wasn't just an olive branch, it was a gamble on vulnerability, gambling on himself and the potential of collaboration. Slowly, the intruder stepped forward, his hand stretching toward Jake's. There was a moment where their palms just hovered, undecided. In that instant, Jake questioned if this one action could alter the trajectory of their lives forever. Then, with a firm grip, they connected. Jake felt a pulse of energy, a silent acknowledgement of fear and hope intertwining. It was a tentative beginning, yet something deeper ignited within him, an affirmation that he could, indeed, lead and inspire change. But just then, an eerie hum broke the spell, and Jake's instincts flared. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. The soft murmur morphed into a cacophony, slamming doors and distant shouts echoed around them, contrasting sharply with the profound connection they had just formed. Jake, caught in the rush of adrenaline, turned back to the intruder. "We have to decide now," he proclaimed. "Are we willing to stand together against whatever is coming? Are you with me, or will we slip back into the dark?" A resolute expression flickered in the man's eyes as uncertainty battled determination. In that moment, his choice would define the next chapter of this story, a line between chaos and potential, fear and courage. Jake could feel the clock ticking, shadows encroaching once more. Would the foundation they had just begun to build save them, or would it crumble under the weight of incoming dread? Would the intruder's fears bind him, or would he grasp the chance to liberate himself alongside Jake? The heartbeat of change had begun, but the looming threat felt ever so close. What would they uncover in the next moment? Would fear unravel their fragile alliance, or would they uncover an unforeseen strength together? The roar of distant chaos surged closer, and with it, a visceral realization uncoiled within Jake. This was a defining moment, not only for him, but also for the man who had just joined his side, a spontaneous partnership forged in the crucible of vulnerability. The world outside threatened to intrude, but here, in this fragile bubble of connection, something monumental was taking shape. They had taken a step, but was it enough? Together, then, the intruder finally said, his voice steadier now, infused with newfound resolve. Jake felt a rush of relief flood through him, followed almost immediately by a surge of purpose. This was more than an alliance, it was a catalyst for change that resonated deep within him. With a quick glance at the team, who had been silently witnessing the evolution of their interaction, Jake took a deep breath, ready to steer them through the approaching storm. As the cacophony drew nearer, shouting voices and unsteady footsteps reverberating through the corridors, Jake summoned every ounce of courage he could muster. He pushed aside the remnants of his old self, embracing the leader he had begun to emerge as, even if the path was fraught with uncertainty. "Stay close," he instructed his team. "We move as one. Follow my lead." The urgency of his command pierced the atmosphere like a rallying cry. He stepped into the hallway, his heart pounding, the other man by his side, a silent understanding electrifying the air between them. The gritty determination in the intruder's gaze fueled Jake's resolve further. With each deliberate step they took, the shifting tides of fear and uncertainty slowly transformed into clarity. They were more than just individuals desperate for survival, they were allies in the face of chaos. The sound of shouts faded momentarily as they moved deeper into the labyrinth of their world, a realm that was both a refuge and a battleground. "Let us find the source of the noise," Jake urged, scanning for any signs of trouble. The team nodded, absorbing his conviction, their faith in him solidifying around the bond he was building with the intruder. Each confrontation in the darkening halls was now an opportunity for revelation. Jake needed to leverage the intruder's experience, the very skills that had kept him alive in this unforgiving environment. "What do you know about what is happening?" he asked, their breaths synchronized in a rhythm of urgency. "I know fear is the enemy," the man replied, eyes narrowed with insight. "And when fear takes over, it breeds recklessness. We must keep our heads." Jake recognized the truth in those words, a lesson distilled from years spent surviving within the confines of this oppressive place. They had shed some of their apprehensions, but now they stood at the edge of a greater challenge, where reckless choices could seal their fates. Rounding a corner, they spotted a group of disoriented employees. Panic reigned, and Jake felt an instinctive pull toward them. "We can't leave them," he cried, but the intruder laid a firm hand on his arm. Rushing in without a plan could escalate the situation, he cautioned, grounding Jake's impulsive instinct. "Let me talk. We need to calm them down first." In that moment, Jake faced a choice: he could cling to his burgeoning role as the decisive leader or yield to the collective insight they had just agreed to embrace. He took a breath, letting the intruder step forward. Empowering others required humility, and Jake realized he was not just leading, he was learning. As the intruder engaged with the frightened group, Jake observed closely, eager to uncover the strength that lay within those around him and perhaps within himself, but just as calm began to settle, a bang echoed through the hall, followed by a scream that shattered the fragile peace. In an instant, the team was thrust back into the throes of chaos, and Jake felt a swelling dread churn within him. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the shadows were chasing them, and it would take every bit of clarity and courage Jake had begun to harness to navigate the confrontation that would ultimately test not just his leadership, but the very fabric of his identity. The moment of truth was arriving, and Jake wouldn't simply stand by, he'd dive into the heart of it. Would courage rise in the face of chaos, or would it all unravel into deeper turmoil before him? The sound of fear echoed in Jake's mind as he turned toward the source of the commotion. Clenching his fists, he fought against the urge to panic, focusing instead on the reality that lay before him. With one ear tuned to the chaos swelling around them, he forced himself to mask his trepidation. "Listen up!" he shouted, trying to pierce through the noise and reach the frightened employees. He felt the heat of countless eyes fixated on him, pleading for reassurance. This moment required him to channel the resolve he had just begun to cultivate. The intruder stepped back, giving Jake room to take charge, and for a fleeting second, he wondered if he had taken a step too far. But he stood firm, swallowing the doubt that crept into his mind. He cleared his throat, forcing an authoritative tone. "We need to form a circle. It will help you feel safer and more secured." A few hesitant voices murmured in response. Jake fought against the swell of panic tangling within him, concentrating on the faces before him, individuals who mirrored his own fear and uncertainty. When he extended his hand, inviting them closer, he felt the fragile thread of connection form in the cacophony around them. It was messy and chaotic, yet within it lay the extreme potential he had barely begun to understand. As the employees reluctantly complied, Jake glanced at the intruder, who offered a subtle nod. This was a glimpse of shared authority. Jake wasn't leading this thrust into the heart of the tempest alone. "Can you help us?" A voice quivered from the back of the group. It belonged to a woman with disheveled hair and wide, glassy eyes. The sincerity in her plea struck Jake harder than he anticipated. The weight of his responsibility bore down upon him. Was there really a way for him to make a difference? "I can," he replied, letting a flicker of determination shine through. "But I need each of you to trust me. We're in this together. Let us face it side by side." For a tense moment, silence filled the space. Jake's heart raced as he awaited their response. Then, a few heads nodded. It was a small victory, but it ignited something within him. He was gaining ground, not only muscling through the immediate terror but also rallying the courage he needed to safeguard his team. He directed his focus back to the intruder, seeking a quick assessment. "What do you suggest we do next?" "Create a plan based on their strengths," he replied, confidently trading the spotlight back to Jake. "Assess the situation, and utilize the team." Jake held his breath as a flood of ideas swirled in his mind. They were just a bunch of frightened workers, but perhaps they possessed qualities that could aid one another in this dire moment. With each critical choice made, he began to feel the leader within him solidify into something concrete. "Okay," he began, surveying the group before him. "Who among you has experience with emergency procedures?" "The safety officer, Alana." Another employee called out. Jake felt a fresh surge of hope, a legitimate resource within their ranks. "Alana, can you step forward?" At her quiet acknowledgement, Jake noticed her confidence begin to build as she realized her expertise could light the path. As he drew Alana into the circle, Jake could almost feel the collective breath of the group releasing tension. The fragile unity he had forged was manifesting a powerful force, collaboration born from desperation. Moving quickly, Jake perceived that if they executed this together, the tension might dissolve into solidarity, but just as momentum seemed to rise, the faint echo of footsteps grew louder, drowning out their brief moment of clarity. The once distant chaos lurched forward again with an imminent threat, distorting all hope. "Stay alert." Jake's voice hardened, adrenaline coursing through him. Every instinct in him screamed this was the pivotal moment that would determine their fates. Would he be able to maintain this fragile sense of leadership when faced with looming dangers? Or would he falter under the weight of expectation? The question lingered as shadows crept closer, casting uncertainty over his newfound resolve. And so, the questions of destiny lingered in the air. Would Jake channel the leader he was becoming in the impending storm, or would doubt and fear seep back in, unraveling all he had fought so hard to build? As the footsteps drew nearer, Jake held his breath, feeling the weight of expectation and fear in the air. His heart raced, pounding like a drum in his chest, but this time, he refused to retreat. He had come too far to let intimidation dictate his fate. Through the chaos tugging at the edges of his newfound courage, Alana stepped forward, taking charge of her place in the circle. If we can fortify a barricade here, we can slow them down until we're ready to figure out our next steps, she proposed, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of urgency. Jake was struck by her confidence. It was a revelation that they had all been waiting for someone to step up and recognize that they were more than just frightened individuals, they were a collective force. They possessed skills that, when woven together, could combat the storm bearing down upon them. Great idea, Alana. Jake encouraged, his tone warmer now, relief washing over him like a balm. Everyone, let us gather whatever we can to strengthen our defenses. Desks, chairs, anything we can use. Energy began to ripple through the small group, the fear receding slightly as each individual sprang into action, collecting items to fortify their temporary sanctuary. Jake felt a swell of pride. They were capable of unity in the face of extreme adversity. In the throes of collective purpose, Jake found himself strategizing alongside those he had once mopped the floors for. Each second spent amongst these brave faces hammered home a vital truth: he had a voice that commanded respect. A newfound sense of acknowledgement surged through him, each collaborative effort solidifying his evolving identity. Tell me how we can help. The intruder joined in, now fully part of their team, seamlessly stepping into the shared space of leadership. Watching him engage reminded Jake of how far they'd come, not just from division to partnership, but from shadows to visibility. The intruder brought strength, layering their efforts in a significant way. Amidst the noise, a sense of clarity settled, grounding Jake further into the moment. As they worked together, the noise outside grew louder, the chaos vibrating through the walls. But Jake chose not to let fear dictate their movements. He turned to his makeshift team, his voice resonating with newfound authority. No matter what happens when they arrive, remember, we are here for each other. Together, we are strong. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a cadre of individuals stormed in, their shouts piercing the air. Jake could feel the panic swirl around him like smoke. But instead of collapsing under pressure, he drew upon the lessons he had learned. He couldn't fade back now. Stay focused. We are not here to fight, Jake called out, stepping to the front, conscious of the commanding presence he now held. If we want to come through this together, we must stand united. Their energy shifted, attention pulling towards him. The intruder positioned himself beside Jake, their collective stance radiating strength and unity. Let us reason instead of fighting. The intruder echoed, his voice steady, betraying none of the fear that had once flickered behind his hardened facade. We can find common ground if we work together. In that moment, Jake saw the flicker of doubt in the eyes of the newcomers. They were not just aggressors but individuals lost in uncertainty, much like them. What had emerged was not just a battle, it was a profound opportunity for dialogue. Jake lifted his head, the flickering lights amplifying the courage pooling within his chest. We don't have to be enemies. Let us talk, he urged, his tone unmistakably warm, inviting, but resolute. Together, we can resolve this without conflict. A heavy stillness filled the room as the intruding party assessed the situation. Jake stood upright, the shadows of his old self fading, replaced by a tangible sense of purpose. He could feel the transformation coursing through him. He was no longer just a janitor but a leader, a custodian of hope. After a long pause, a voice called out from among the intruding group. We can talk. In that instant, the fragile walls that had separated them began to crack. What once loomed as chaos now held the potential for restoration. As voices bridged the divide, Jake marveled at the realization growth stemmed from collaboration and understanding. He had finally embraced the essence of leadership. With the tension receding, Jake knew he had achieved a monumental victory. He had faced the darkness of fear within himself, embraced vulnerability, and carved his own path through uncertainty. Through resilience and courage, he would move towards not only reclaiming his space but redefining it. The echoes of earlier uncertainties began to slip away, replaced with profound clarity. Jake stood firm, having successfully guided his team through chaos and recognized their strength. They were custodians, not just of their environment but of each other, carving forward through the light of change. Buoyed by this newfound sense of purpose, Jake's heart swelled with pride. He had conquered his inner battles, stepped into his leadership, and facilitated connection in a time of crisis. In the aftermath of that moment, he understood that the real achievement lay not just in saving the day but in the journey itself, a transformation etched into his very being. Jake stepped out of the shadows and into the brilliant light of possibility, ready to embrace the next chapter of his journey, no longer a ghost but a force to be reckoned with. With the dawn of possibility unfolding before him, Jake turned to his team with a smile, knowing that from this point on, he would never again simply be the janitor. He was now a leader, a custodian of change. Make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. You need to subscribe now. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let it know these stories matter. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's incredible transformation. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.